Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Smart Home Choice podcast. As always, my name is Gary Hibbert, and I'm glad that you guys are here. It's been a while since I've done my last podcast, but as some of you may know, I did go through a life-changing event where I unfortunately lost my sister after a long fight that she's had with lupus. And because of that, I really had to take a break, reflect on my life, and just really take a look at what was important to me and where I wanted to take things going into the future. It allowed me to kind of reflect on life and sit down and kind of go through some goals and what I wanted to achieve and accomplish, and just to make sure that what I was doing was lining up with what was really true to my heart. So with that, I'm back. I'm actually excited to be kind of jumping back into the saddle. And one of the things I would say that I learned through this process is that there was this feeling of guilt for not doing anything for so long. And what I discovered is that guilt is actually a good thing. It's the soul's call to action, I guess I would say, to let you know that your work is not done yet, if that makes sense. At least that's the best way that I can describe it and how I was feeling. So with that, like I said, I'm back in the saddle. And on this month's call, and I thought that this would be a good one to kind of get things going, have a call with my good friend Stefan Aarnio, somebody that I've known for a number of years, a true action taker. He goes by, respect the grind. That's kind of his main slogan. I've learned a lot from him, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard me talk about money, people, deal. And to be honest, this is the person that I learned it from, and I've learned a lot from him over the years. So I think you guys will learn a lot from this particular call. So we actually got into quite a few things. Are we in a bubble? What's going to happen with the market going into 2018? What's the best strategy for beginning investors? Because I know that's something that a lot of people in the beginning struggle with. We actually even got into Bitcoin and should you be getting involved? A lot of people are talking about it right now. And avoid analysis paralysis. That's something that everybody suffers with from time to time, even myself. So with that, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this month's podcast. And I will talk to you guys next month. Take care. All right. So on the call today, I've got my good friend Stefan Aarnio, who is an award-winning real estate investor. He's also an award-winning entrepreneur, and he's the author of multiple books, including Self-Made, The 10 Commandments of Negotiation, and one of my favorites, Money, People, Deal. Stefan, thank you very much for being on the call today.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
No problem. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So listen, why don't we kind of jump right into it? And I know one of the things that a lot of people are going to want to know about is, how did you, Stefan Aarnio, get started in real estate investing? And I guess also, too, why?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think the reason why I got into real estate, Gary, I graduated from the University of Manitoba in 2008 with a major in English and a minor in music, and I was a guitar teacher teaching guitar out of my mother's home. And the first job I got out of university was a minimum wage job working in the middle of the night at a call center. And I realized, the school system didn't do anything for me. I didn't have any career lined up. I had a useless degree. I didn't have any money. And I had a rock band. That was my get rich quick scheme. Was I wanted to be in a rock band. I wanted to be a rock star, and music was not really making a whole lot of money. And so out of desperation, I got into real estate. I started reading about the benefits, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I thought, wow, this sounds great. And I got into the business, just out of sheer desperation. There was nothing else for me. So I just chose real estate. I said, I'm going to do this. And here I am almost 10 years later, become somewhat of a success. And it was just nothing but wanting more in my life. I was living at my mom's house. I wanted to own a car. I wanted to own a home. I maybe wanted to have a family one day. I wanted money, and I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I got into real estate.
Right. And so it sounds like Robert Kiyosaki obviously played a huge role. Was it just reading the books? Did you actually go to the seminars? How involved were you? And were there any other mentors that really kind of helped shape the life that you have today?
Well, I went and read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was finishing university. And the book said a couple of things. You know, it was talking about saving money. It was talking about investing. It was talking about saving up for a real estate investment class. And so I started saving 70% of my income. I was only making 10 grand a year, but I saved 7,000. And with that money, I went out and bought Donald Trump's, real estate university weekend. And I went to the class, and of course, at the end of the class, they're offering a $30,000 mentorship. And, I think I had a $500 credit card at the time, and I had no cash. I spent all my cash at the time going to the class. And I went up to the parking lot and I cried. I had a good frustrated cry because here I was 22 years old wanting to do this, and I had no way to actually learn it or figure it out. So I just kept going to seminar after seminar, and I've spent to date probably about $300,000 educating myself, going to things all over the world, all over the country, hiring coaches, hiring mentors, reading books and audiobooks. I read about a book a week usually. I try to write a book a year. And just going and going and going. I've just made my life about lifelong learning, and now I'm educating other people. So it's not just lifelong learning; it's also lifelong educating of other people as well.
Right. And sorry, and I want to make sure I got this correct. So you said you spent over 300,000 so far now in education. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, last week I think I spent another $3,000 last week. I've got 2 coaches on retainer. I hired a consultant. So I've spent a lot of money, man. And what I find is usually the person who spends the most gets the most.
Yeah, no, and I think that's such an important point because I know a lot of people are scared to spend that money on mentors, or sometimes they see those infomercials and they think that it's a complete scam. But obviously, you're saying something completely different, where you're saying mentorship is incredibly important.
Well, you can't get anywhere without mentors. I mean, like, realistically, my dad, I remember when I signed up for my first seminar weekend, I went to my mom's house. I said, Mom, I bought this seminar. And my mom says, you paid how much for that? You paid too much. It was only like $1,500 at the time.
Right.
She said, you paid too much. It's never going to work. You're never going to do it. Then I go to my dad's house. My parents are divorced. And my dad says, those guys are taking you for a ride. You're never going to do it. You're never going to buy a property. And even if you do, no one's going to finance you. And even if you do buy a property somehow, the bank is going to foreclose on you, because they're going to call the mortgage, and then you're going to be broke and bankrupt. And the irony is, my dad, he started working for me 2 weeks ago. It's been about 8-9 years since he said that to me. He's working for me in my property division. He's grinding the phones, getting me deals now. So,
Nice.
So the haters at the beginning, they'll be asking you for a job later if you stick to it.
Right. So obviously that's an important piece, and especially if you're starting off in real estate investing. But what is there a particular strategy that you would recommend for a beginning investor?
Which strategy?
No,
is there a particular strategy?
Yeah, is there a particular strategy? So brand new, I've never invested before. I've read maybe Robert Kiyosaki's book, and I'm online looking at some videos and stuff, and now I want to start. Is there a particular strategy that Stefan recommends?
Well, you know what? A lot of people say go do a buy and hold. And when I started, I did a whole bunch of buy and holds. I got up to about 20 rental units. And then, I realized that straight up buy and holds with no supporting business is kind of just a straight up dumb idea. So I recommend now for people when they want to get into real estate, like if someone signs up for a coaching program with me, we get them into a flip right away. So I want to get people into a flip. I want to make someone 20, 30 grand right away, pay for their education. And then, I want somebody to do a bunch of flips or a bunch of wholesales to have cash. And once you got 100 grand cash, then you can start deciding on some buy and holds. But I think you got to learn to do the business, learn to find the deals at 40 to 60 cents on the dollar, learn to raise the money, learn to do all the stuff. And then once you're smart and once you got your team built, and you got some cash, then you can get into any type of thing you want. Lots of guys that I train who go full time, they start doing a deal a month, and then a lot of them open up other businesses. I've got 11 streams of income now because I've opened up more and more businesses. The year of 2018 here coming up is going to be the year e-commerce for me. I'm going to be getting big into e-commerce. So every single person, I think, needs to start out with earned income if they can, if they don't have any cash. And then if you start having cash, you can get into buy and hold. But that's how I think it should be done. I think that's the real way. I think it's the right way. I think it's the way that's repeatable and scalable and sustainable for somebody.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes a lot of sense, Stefan. I think you really kind of hit it on the head there. Now, I know you've done some videos on this, and I want to get your thought and share this with the audience. Where do you see the market going for 2018? And are we in a bubble? Because people are always nervous, or they're always wanting to try and time the market, which is always difficult. Well, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've done several videos and several talks about this. I think we're going to have a crash by 2020. I think that we are overvalued. I think the intrinsic value in some areas is gone. Intrinsic value in real estate, just so you know, is cost to build. So, if something's trading for more money than it costs to build, then that means it's, over the intrinsic value. So in Winnipeg right now, I'm buying crack houses for $100,000. And that's about $100 a square foot for a crack house. And I'll go and flip it for $200 a square foot, which is really high, man. If you start going to the United States, their property trades for much less than our Canadian property. So I've seen some people say that Canadian property is overvalued by 30 to 60%. I would agree. And the other thing to note is we're at 101% of GDP in debt right now. So Canadians are in a huge amount of debt. Americans are only in 80% of GDP debt. So we're both in debt, but we're like getting over the edge of debt. And most of Canadians have most of their net worth in their home. So if the home prices went down for some reason, something happened, and let's say interest rates went to like 7 or 12%, which they could, it's happened before, a lot of Canadians would be in trouble. They'd be screwed because they don't have the cash flow to maintain their position if the property values go down. So I think that we could be on the edge of one of the biggest financial disasters of all time. And I think that we could have, almost like a repetition of, I don't want to say 2008, but something worse. If you look at the cycles of history, we're ready for a big war right now. We're ready for something crazy happening. The U.S. currency could collapse. There's so many things that could happen. So I think that if you're investing right now, you got to be really smart and do really good value buys and buy stuff that's, a value play, not speculation, because, everything right now, the stock market's in a speculative place. Bitcoin is ultra speculative right now. You've got, real estate looks speculative. Lots of things are looking speculative, and usually that happens before it all comes tumbling down.
Right. So you're not saying not to move away from real estate. You're just saying, make sure that if you're going to continue to stay in real estate, that you're buying smart and you're buying things that have good value.
Yeah, here's an example. I'm buying, my team does about a house a week. So every week we're either buying and fixing and selling a house, or we're flipping it, we're wholesaling a house every week. And the stuff that I'm taking on right now is like value houses. So like if some shit went down, let's say the economy went weird, I could probably rent them out. I could sell them. I could do whatever I need to do. So it's not really super risky. I got some friends who are doing some luxury stuff. I don't know if that would be good. I've done some upper median, lower luxury homes before. That stuff is usually the first stuff to go. If you're a home builder right now, home builders are usually the first guys to go. So the stuff that I'm doing, if it got really bad, we could just, rent it out and hold it if we had to. But typically I want to stay in the value part of the market, the median, stuff that's easy to either rent or liquidate if I have to.
Right. So you're putting yourself in a position where you've got multiple exit strategies, right? So you can either flip it or hold it.
I mean, I don't like holding properties. I've got some that I hold that I'm holding forever, but I don't like to hold single family homes. Like it's not a good business holding 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units. Those aren't good holds. You know, you got to manage them yourself, and you know, they always need subsidies, and they're not good assets for holding. But if we had to hold them, we could hold them, and we could do whatever. We could ride the storm if we had to.
Right. Now, is there a certain asset class that you would hold? Like, are we talking, say, multi-units, apartment buildings? Is that something that you would keep in your portfolio?
Well, there's 3 types of multi-units. So there's, 4 units and less, which generally aren't good unless you have less than 50% debt to equity ratio. And the ones that I own, I have, very little debt relative to the value. So they do cash flow. But then there's, the 5 units, the 49 units, those are your middle-sized buildings, which are generally not the greatest buildings to own. And then there's the ones that everybody wants, the 50-plus units. Those are your, institutional buyers want those. So I think that, what I teach people with flipping houses is you want to get into the big money as quick as possible, and you want to get big investors backing you up right away. And same if you're doing multi-units, I think you want to get into the big stuff as quick as possible. You don't want to stay in the small stuff, because the small stuff, although it's good, you can get trapped there. The management's a problem, and the management doesn't scale very well. So, a lot of guys, like if you look at guys who are really rich, like Donald Trump or Warren Buffett, those guys didn't own a duplex in Winnipeg. They didn't own a duplex in where are you again? You're out in Ajax.
Right.
They didn't buy a duplex in Ajax. Those guys were doing other things.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of falls into, when I was younger anyways, playing Monopoly, where you get those 3 green houses and you bump it up to a red hotel. And it sounds like that's where you're going with this.
Yeah, well, what I say to people is, hey, if you're going to flip 4 houses, make 30 grand a house, take that 120 grand, go buy yourself a bigger asset. Like, one that's good right now is storage facilities. Lots of guys that were buying apartment blocks 5 years ago, they're buying storage facilities now because the apartment blocks don't have the returns they used to have. The cap rates are compressed, which pushes the value up. And a lot of my smart friends are selling their apartment blocks right now, not buying them.
Really? And then they're moving into the storage space.
Yeah, exactly. They're either holding or they're selling, and they're going into the storage space.
And why is that, Stefan? Can you share that with us?
Well, that's simply because there's too much money chasing a small amount of buildings. So they're trading, like in Winnipeg right now, like if you want to buy a big multi-unit, you're going to pay 100 to 200 grand a door, which means the cash flow is going to be crap. The cap rate's not going to be very good. You're going to pay a massive premium. So if you're somebody that wants to make money, like I'm looking for a value add deal. I want a deal where I can add value, pull my equity out after I add value. So if you want to add value and make money, that's not going to be the place for you. But if you're going to be somebody just parking, if you have like $10 million, you just want to park it safely, then go buy yourself an apartment block. Like a lot of Chinese investors are doing that. They want to get their money out of the Chinese currency and into American or Canadian currency, and they'll buy an apartment block at like a 2 cap or a 1 cap just to get out of their currency because their currency is depreciating. So some people will do that, and if you just want to park money, go do it. But if you want to make money, I don't know if you're going to really make a lot of money in that asset class right now because there's too many people wanting that asset class.
Right. No, and that makes sense. And I want to kind of just bring it back a little bit because I know we were talking about, Toronto and Vancouver and its market going up. Is there a reason why it had gone up so rapidly over the last, say, 5, 10 years? And I know there was a video you talked about in regards to value versus vanity. And I don't know if that all kind of ties in together.
Well, it totally does, Gary, because the fact of the matter is, real estate's a local business. So, your local neighborhood of Ajax or your local area, there's local people who work and live there. And they have jobs, and the local jobs, you have local salaries, and the local salaries give an amount of money that people can mortgage for a home. And what happens in the market like Vancouver and Toronto is it turns into a vanity market because people come from China, people come from all over the world with money that they made somewhere else, and they dump it down in Toronto and they dump it down in Vancouver, and the prices go up, 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 and eventually, Bob and Mary who work at the meatpacking plant, or they work at the construction site, or they work at the secretary office or whatever, they can't afford to live in their own backyard anymore because, the foreign monies come in. The monies come from somewhere else. So if you look at, like Palm Springs down in California, nobody makes money in Palm Springs. People go to Palm Springs to spend money. So, people make their money in LA, or they make their money in New York, or they make their money in, Seattle, and they'll fly down to Palm Springs, have a summer home, and just dump their money, and life is good. But there's no jobs in Palm Springs. It's like Las Vegas. There's no jobs in Las Vegas. You have to work at a casino as a cleaning lady or a poker dealer. There's no, real jobs over there. So it's not a value market. It's based on vanity. It's based on people from around the world wanting to own a condo in Las Vegas. And, the poker dealer, he's not able to buy a condo in his own market. You know what I mean?
Right. And where do you think the best places are to invest right now in real estate? And I mean, and is there something that you specifically look for when you're about to buy or to do a flip?
Well, I've always done well, Gary, on really screwed up stuff. And I'm
Okay.
starting to I'm getting into the mentality now. Like, if I can't massively add value to this property, I don't know if I want it. Every deal I've done well on has been massively screwed up. And every deal I haven't done well on hasn't been screwed up enough. So I want a screwed up vendor, or I want a screwed up property, and I want to be able to turn it around and get value. And I think that goes for buy and holds, and it goes for buy and sells. I want to be able to add value, because when I can add value, that's where my profit is. But if I can't add value, then I'm not getting ahead.
Right. And when you
Does
say,
that make sense?
yeah, it does. And I mean, when you say value, you mean value to the actual property itself, and also, trying to bring value to the neighborhood as well, or is it just to that property?
Well, when you bring value to the property, you bring value to the neighborhood. Like we have, I think we have 3 homes finishing in the next 10 days. So these homes, when we bought them, had cats in them, or they're screwed up, or they're burnouts, or they're messed up homes, or there's drug addicts living in them or something. And we come in, we turn it around, and a nice family will move in. And then, a nice family moving into the neighborhood ultimately will appreciate the neighborhood because, it kicks out the bad people. There's people on drugs, or if there's prostitutes or gangs. The families are going to call the cops every 10 minutes on those guys, and eventually those guys are just going to go away. So it does add value to the property, which eventually will add value to the neighborhood when the good people move into these, transitional neighborhoods.
Right. And those are the kind of areas that you like.
Well, you make money in the transitional zones. So like, I do a seminar and I show people, here's the ghetto, here's the war zone, here's the median zone, here's the lower luxury, here's the upper luxury. And so I'm showing all these different types of zones. And I think the best place to invest, if it's buy and hold or buy and sell, is a transitional zone. So this is a zone that's either getting better or maybe it's getting worse, but it's changing. And you want to find those zones where, maybe 5 years ago it was scary. And now, 5 years from now is going to be students, or it's going to be immigrants, or it's going to be somebody, yuppies moving in rather than crackheads.
And how do you determine that? Are there something that you're specifically looking for? Is it job creation in the area? Is it transportation? What is that Stefan's looking for? How do you determine
Well,
that?
usually you can find those areas by the artists. So where do the artists live? The artists usually live in the next cool part of town. Another way that you can look at is you can look at the renter to homeowner ratio and how has that been changing over time. So as things are changing, as the renters are moving out, the homeowners are moving in, that really changes the value. Now, if the opposite happens, like in the past, what happened in the 80s was they took a whole bunch of mental patients, they shut down the mental institution, and they shut it down, and all those mental patients moved into some of the neighborhoods in Winnipeg, and those neighborhoods turned into bad neighborhoods. So that's the opposite effect where, they close down a prison or something and all the prisoners move into one part of town. So there's that where the renters are moving in, and then there's the opposite where the homeowners are moving in. And I like to choose areas where we've got the homeowners moving in, because the homeowners ultimately appreciate the areas.
Right. Yeah, they're going to take the time to cut the lawn and to, upkeep the property, plant some beautiful flowers, all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, you can look at the curtains, you can look at the lawn, you can look at your renters leave garbage all over the lawn, homeowners clean up the garbage, they cut the lawn, they keep the fence nicely painted, they have little garden gnomes, and, they put a flag up outside. And, if you go to the renter house, it looks trash, it needs paint, there's crap on the lawn. And then, they got beer curtains, like a Budweiser towel in the front window, or a marijuana flag or something.
Yeah,
and obviously, the homeowners, they don't want that. So the homeowners try to get away from those, and the renters, they don't care. I mean, they're renting. It doesn't matter.
Right. Okay. So now I'm listening to this podcast. I'm on the fence. I'm not sure. Okay. Should I get in? Should I not get in? I decide to get in. What's the biggest mistake? Because you've mentored a lot of investors over the last several years. What's the biggest mistake that you see a lot of beginning investors make?
Well, I think one of the biggest things, Gary, is just not having enough education, training, coaching, mentoring. Like, to use myself as an example, first 2 years I got into this, I didn't have any money for coaches, mentors, anything. And I went to all the free seminars, and I did a couple shitty deals at the beginning because I just perceived myself as not being able to afford the proper training. And in reality, looking back, I could have financed it. I could have found a way, but I thought I was so smart, and I was really just prideful and ignorant. And what I think is important to people, if you want to be really good at this, is you do got to go get a basic education in this. A basic education costs usually about 30 grand. I'm convinced now, I've trained enough guys, you got to be in this game for about 100 grand of education before you're really good. And I hate to say that, like, I hate to say, oh, you just got to pay the money. That sounds wrong to say. But the people I've met who are really good have done some massive investments in themselves. They get the personal development, they get the training, they get the power team, they get the mentors, they get everybody, and they're able to put something great together. There's a lot of people who, they'll try to save money and use their time, and they'll be in this game for 20 years and they'll, do one property a year for 20 years. Well, that's okay. But, some of my students do 20 properties in their second year. So, you look at the cost of education and you look at the results. I think that you got to be educated and smart coming in. And the other thing that's great about education, Gary, is you can never lose it. Like, no one's ever going to take it away from you. If you lost everything, you could get it back. But a lot of people, I think, just take their 30 grand or 50 grand on their line of credit or something, buy a duplex, and then they hold on to it. And after like 7 years, the deferred maintenance comes up. And then they go, oh crap, I can't afford to own this. And then they're forced to sell. That's what happens with so many people getting into this game, is they just go and buy one or two properties. And it's worked for a long time in Canada because Canada has gone up for 25 years. All the Canadian markets have gone up pretty much. So you could be a stupid idiot and buy anything and you made equity. But I don't think that that's going to continue over the next 10-year trend. In fact, it might go down. Like if you go do that today, you might be underwater at some point. So I think that You got to put your money in your education, put it in yourself, learn the skills, learn to raise money, learn to negotiate, learn to buy, learn to run a business, and that's going to make this happen for you.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you on that. I think education is such an important piece. I mean, I've done a lot of education over the years myself. And I guess this is where there's a bit of a fine line because yes, education is important, but then some people believe that they want to keep on taking the education, and you get to this analysis paralysis. How do you overcome that? How do you say, okay, enough education is enough. Now it's time to take action.
Well, that's a whole nother kettle of fish, my friend. I've been there myself where, I remember last year I made a huge profit and I just bought more education and it didn't really benefit me because I had too much. I hadn't taken enough action. So the time to take education is when you're plateaued. When you're on a plateau or you're stuck, that's the time to take it. But then once you take it, you got to act on it, get your return out of it, and then you go get more. You don't just want to be going to seminars and coaches forever. I mean, you could get stuck in that trap and never get out. That certainly is a trap. So you got to have enough action to get the value out of this stuff. And typically I'll go buy something, whether it's I just bought some packages on public speaking and running a sales team. So I just bought some packages. These are home study packages, whatever. I'll do the course. And, I'll do that. I'll make sure I do it. And then once I've done it, I'm going to take action on it. And then I'll be ready to go get something else. But you don't just want to load up with a million things and do nothing. I mean, obviously that's a recipe for failure. And I've met some people who spent 150 grand on education, got nothing because they just stockpile courses. Obviously that's the wrong idea.
Right. You kind of hit on something there that's really important. And I want to understand, Stefan Aarnio's day, because obviously education is an important piece. But when you wake up and then when you go to bed, what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, my life is kind of crazy now, Gary, because I'm traveling a lot. Like I was on the road for I think 8 or 9 days straight on stage every day. That was a tough stint. I'm going to Costa Rica on a 30-day water fast coming up here on Friday. I'm leaving for that, so tomorrow. So my life is all over the place, but I've got a couple common themes. I've got scheduled meetings with my team every week. We've got scheduled meetings every day. I typically focus on new business in the afternoon. I want to be earning new business. I'm not really a morning person. I prefer to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, even 4 in the morning, rather than get up early. Your rock stars are either going to bed super late or waking up super, super early. And the traveling really disturbs, having a routine. So I've had routines before where I wake up at 5 and go to bed at 10. My routine right now presently is more like, I don't know, I'm probably getting up at 8 or 9 and going to bed at 3 in the morning. So it's a different thing altogether. But my life right now, I'll say this, Gary, is focused around my communication with my customers is done in a one-to-many fashion. And with my employees, it's done in a one-to-many fashion as well. Because I'm in that 7-figure earner space where I can't do many one-on-one meetings anymore. If you're doing one-on-one meetings, you're going to be in the 6-figure space. You're making 6 figures. But when you go to 7, you start doing one-to-many, and it's more about teams and groups of people you're dealing with all the time. So that's why you got to get your public speaking game on if you want to make a lot of money, because you start talking to groups of people. There's not enough time in the day to do one-on-one with everybody.
Right. And you know what? And I'm glad that you said that, because it's been amazing just watching your transition from where you were when we first met and you came out and did a talk to our group to where you are now. So I just want to say, congratulations on the progress that you've made and the accomplishments. You've done a phenomenal job. But on that note as well, too, there's something that I want to talk, or at least get your input on, and just to explain to everybody, because this is probably one of the favorite books that you wrote and that really talked to me, which was Money People Deal. And can you just kind of break that down, what that means and why that's so important?
Yeah, well, Money People Deal, I wrote that in 2013, I think it came out. And Money People Deal is all about putting money, people, and deals together. And when you can put those three pieces together out of the money, people, deal triangle, when you put those three pieces together, you create equity. And you get rich on equity. You don't get rich on cash flow. Cash flow is good. You need cash flow. But where people always get rich is equity. You know, Mark Zuckerberg, he's Facebook. He's rich on equity. Donald Trump's rich on equity. Warren Buffett's rich on equity. That's where people get rich. So I show people how to put money, people, and deals together so that you can create equity, earn equity, and get rich in the process. And what I show people is essentially what I've done for almost 9 years now is bringing a deal and a team to an investor, selling the deal to them, and then you make your money. And we've done that over and over and over again. That's how I became a self-made millionaire, is by putting so many deals together, just putting deals together one after the other. And the money, the people, and the deal comes together, and that's how business happens.
Right. And out of those three, what would you say is the most important piece?
Well, the most important piece, Gary, is always the deal. Like, the deal drives everything. And like, I've got an acquisition team here in Winnipeg. We got 3 guys plus me on the acquisition team working the market every day, working it. And, you know, I used to think, oh, I could only do 12 deals in Winnipeg. Well, now I'm doing like 50 deals a year in Winnipeg. And that comes from being better at finding the opportunities, working the opportunities, negotiating, tracking. So many skills go into that acquisition. And the deal drives everything. If you got the deal, you got the money. The money's not worth anything. It's worth very little on its own. And, you know, every contractor will always ask you, can I partner with you on the deal? Well, that's stupid, because the contractor, he gets paid his wage. So it doesn't matter. But the deal, if you're a guy who can control the deal, you're the kingpin. And a lot of these deals, Gary, like today we got a deal we're wholesaling. I want 20 grand for it. We just tied this up. I'm going to sell for 20 grand, make 20 grand. That's great. I could fix it and hold it and flip it, maybe make 40 grand. But, you know, to me today, 20 grand is worth more today. So I'm going to wholesale it, and I own the deal, so I'm able to move it. So I think the deal's the king, and that's why people need to learn how to make deals, find deals, tie up deals. And it's a skill-based game. If you can't find a deal, that's because your skill level isn't there. That's what it is. It's all about skill level.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, because I know when I first got into it, I didn't have a whole lot of money. So what I had to do was I had to control the deal. And when I was able to control that deal, that the money came. And once you understand how the money works, it's such a game changer that you don't actually have to hold it. You just have to know how to attract it. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, well, you got to be able to, I mean, there's so many things we teach people. You got to build your brand. You got to command value. You got to learn to raise capital, learn to negotiate, learn to sell. If you have the soft skills backing you behind everything, you're going to do great. But if, you know, what a lot of people do is they listen to a podcast like this, or they go to a seminar and they go, oh, well, I'll just go out and do it. Well, bro, you don't have this training. You don't have the skills. You don't have the mindset. And so a lot of people aren't able to go very far because they worked on, you know, poetry in school, or they worked on computer science. Well, that doesn't matter in the real world. What matters is the soft skills of negotiating, raising money, putting a team together, leadership. There's so many things that matter that so many people just aren't working on. So when I'm working with people, we're working on all those skills that people never learned in school.
Right. And you also wrote a book again on the 10 Commandments of Negotiation, which I think obviously is incredibly important. And I read that book and I loved it. But can you explain why is negotiation so important to the audience?
Well, negotiation it's very important for many reasons. I mean, one of them is if you don't negotiate, you're going to get taken advantage of by someone who negotiates. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, you know, if you're in real estate or if you're somebody in business, there typically is no inherent profit in business. So if if you have a property, or if you have, let's say you're selling some widget, there's usually no profit in that unless you're able to negotiate the price you need. So I'll look at my deals. Let's say I make 20, 30 grand on a deal. Well, the asking price was probably 20 or 30 grand more. So if I bought it at full asking price, I'd make $0. But because I was able to negotiate a lower price, that's where my profit was at. So negotiating, it helps you with your payment terms. It helps you with your profitability. It really is the number one skill that you need to be running a business. Raising capital's up there too, but I really put negotiating probably as the first skill. And so many people just haven't learned it. So when they get into this business, they get rocked by people who are good at negotiating.
Right. Yeah, and there's a little quote that you had here as well too in this book. There's only one way to get what you want in life, and that's to ask. And I guess that's just part of that negotiation, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to negotiate. You got to ask. You got to be someone who is, unapologetic. I see people, making offers and they're apologetic about it. You got to ask, and you got to believe that this is something you should have.
Yeah.
So I'm all about negotiating. We do negotiation training with people where we put them through 30 live negotiations against real opponents for real money. And when you win, when you win, you get money. And when you lose money. And people learn pretty fast how to be a better negotiator. And there's so many things that go into that. It's a huge study.
No, for sure. And I think it's an important study as well, too. Okay, so listen, there's a couple more questions here before we wrap things up. But going into 2018, and I know we touched on this earlier, but I still think it's a really important topic. As an investor, how do you prepare yourself for the upcoming changes in the market?
Well, I think you got to be hedging all the time. Like, you don't know what's actually going to work. And that's a big entrepreneurship thing that I believe in is, I got 11 streams of income because I don't know which one of these streams is going to be working tomorrow. Because things are always changing. I mean, dude, Sears just went out of business. Sears used to be a huge Canadian retailer, an American retailer. It's gone now. So you got to look at it and say, okay, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You never know what's going to work. So you got to have lots of things going. But at the same time, you got to be focused on a couple things that are your winners. So I think you got to be diverse enough that you can pivot or you can hedge if you need to. But you also got to be focused enough that you're really great at something. So there's a balance there. You never know what's going to work. You never know what's not going to work. When I started out in investing, Gary, I used to say, oh yeah, this deal's going to be a sure thing. It's going to work. Now I look at my deals. I'm like, I have no idea which one of these deals is going to be great and which one's going to be crap. You just don't know. So you have to have enough things going that you're diverse, but enough of a focus that you can be great.
Right. Does that go along the lines of saying, throwing as many darts as you can because eventually you'll get some bullseyes?
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, businesses have a 90% failure rate. So that means you got to start 10 businesses. And 2018, I'm going to be coming out in the journal space in e-commerce hard. That's going to be my new business is e-commerce. So I'm always diversifying. I'm hedging. And you got to try a lot of things. Some things are going to catch and be really great. And some things, they just don't work. But, I'd rather you lose $2,000 trying something out than to go in big and get smashed. So, I'm always testing. I'm doing little tests. I'm trying things out. And some of the things work. 80% fails, but 20% works. And the 20% is so big, it makes up for all the losers.
Right. And that's an 80-20 rule.
That's right. Pareto's principle.
Right. Okay, so listen, you know what, Stefan, we've spent a lot of time on real estate, where the market's going, mindset, the importance of education. And I just wanted to switch gears onto this one particular question in and around, and there's so much buzz around it right now, which is Bitcoin. And I know that I think you did a seminar, I think last night or the other night. I didn't get a chance to join, but can you just talk about Bitcoin and what you know about it and what your thoughts are on it?
Well, actually doing a webinar tonight, so you haven't missed it.
Oh,
It's going on tonight. A friend of mine's putting it on. He's going to teach us about Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is a couple things. Like, one side says Bitcoin's not worth anything intrinsically, which is true. It's literally worth $0. But then there's the other side that says, Bitcoin's going to be the new money of the internet, and this could be worth $1 million a coin. And Bitcoin right now, I don't know what it's worth, maybe 20 grand a coin or something. Nobody knows. My biggest thing with Bitcoin is nobody knows what the actual intrinsic price of Bitcoin is. Nobody knows. And we're going to find out eventually what it's worth. It might be worth $0. It might be $1,000 a coin. It might be $1 million a coin. Nobody knows. And it's going up at such crazy rates right now. I mean, some people are saying it's tulip mania, kind of like in the old days in Holland. The Dutch were trading tulips, these little tulip bulb flowers, and at the end they were trading for the price of a house for one tulip. So, I was watching the Wolf of Wall Street talk about this on TV yesterday, and he was saying when the futures market came out for tulips and tulip mania, that's when they crashed. And we're now getting into a futures market for Bitcoin, so people can short it. And, that could be the beginning of the end for Bitcoin. When I look at something, Gary, I want to know the intrinsic value. Like gold, for example, has intrinsic value. It's been the same value throughout history. Gold has always been worth the same amount of purchasing power. And so gold is a constant. Like people say that gold doesn't have value, but I argue in ancient Rome and today it's the same purchasing power. So gold has intrinsic value. There's a finite amount of gold. The dollar, the Canadian dollar that we have, the American dollar, that's fiat currency. It's ultimately becoming worthless over time. And then you have Bitcoin, which is protected by blockchain technology. And who knows where that's going to go. I think it's kind of like 2001 and the dot-com boom and bust. Everybody was buying pets.com and all these weird companies that never happened. And one day everybody woke up and it was all worth nothing. So I think you got to be really careful with Bitcoin right now. I mean, there's probably a lot of people making money. I think we're going to show people how to make money in it tonight. But as far as being a real player in that, I think you really, really got to know what you're doing. And I think, unfortunately, most people don't know what they're doing.
yeah, no, and I agree with you on that as well, too. And I think what people really understand, because I understand where you're coming from, just in regards to the intrinsic value in gold and silver. I mean, that's really the only thing that's really stood the test of time. Fiat currency, US, the Canadian dollar, no currency has ever survived. So where I'm going with this is that people really have to educate themselves and understand the history of money and currency and what the differences are.
Right. And one thing I want to know, Gary, and this is like, in real estate, when real estate starts going up at $500 a day, that's when the crash is coming. And so Bitcoin's doing that right now. It's going up like 15% a day or something retarded. So when you look at that, you got to say, what is driving the value? What is pushing this up? And the real answer is nobody knows. Nobody knows. People say it's not manipulated, but how do you know? One thing that Jordan Belfort, the Wolf, was talking about yesterday is he said, there's only so much Bitcoin in circulation. There's a very small amount of it being traded, and the rest is just sitting there. So, the demand is artificial. It's this small little bit of coins that are getting traded at a high velocity, and it's driving the price up. It's not that Bitcoin is better today than it was yesterday, just like gold. Gold is not better today than it was 2,000 years ago, but it's a constant value. And that's why we're coming back to real estate. We're talking about areas that are actually better. When the homeowners move in, that's a better neighborhood than when it was all renters. So that's where we're coming back to real value, intrinsic value, and how is this property actually worth more? It's because it's a better neighborhood today than it used to be. That's a good investment. But Bitcoin, what makes Bitcoin worth more? What makes it better? I couldn't tell you.
Right. You got to make the money in the buy. And obviously, if you're going to get into this Bitcoin, it's got to be a play where you're in, and obviously you're going to want to get out at some point in time.
Well, and that's human nature. I mean, people get in when it's going up, and they're euphoric. Every day is the best day ever. And then one day, you know, they don't get out because they just keep making it every day. And one day it's all gone. And that's what, you know, there probably is a time here to make a ton of money in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. But as far as the long-term value, like, you know, I look at myself and I say this, okay, you know, I can launch 50 grand into e-commerce right now and I'll get it right eventually. It might take me 2 years to get it right. But if I threw 50 grand in Bitcoin, who knows what's going to happen? You know, who knows, man? I mean, my 50 grand could turn into 0 or it could turn into 100. And I would rather go into something I control, like a business, because I know that even if I mess it up, eventually I can get it right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying. You're saying do not speculate in any business.
Yeah, well, you know what? I want you to speculate with $2,000. Go try out a test for $2,000. Sure, you might lose your money. But if you're going to go and really try to do something, I think you got to be able to. What I'm always investing in is myself and my brand and my people, because I know that, you know, for example, internet marketing is something I've been in for a while. I've been doing that for about 5 years. Gary, I had to spend 150 grand in internet marketing before I started making profit. And people don't look at internet marketing like that. They look at it and go, oh, I'll just throw up a website and start making money. It doesn't work like that, man. You need a certain level of investment to hit it. And I've said on this call earlier, you need like a 30 to 100 grand education, 30 grand to 100 grand education to really hit it in real estate. And that's just what it costs to train someone to be smart enough to be able to do this. Same with internet marketing. If you want to be good at that, you got to dump like 150 grand to win. I'm going into e-commerce right now. I wouldn't be surprised if I had to dump 150 grand into that to win as well.
Yeah, you know what? You've done, again, an incredible job. And anybody that's listening, I highly recommend that you guys all just Google Stefan Aarnio and just see the stuff that this guy's done, from the videos to the books he's written to the websites. The content is just all over the place. And you just have a lot of really good information out there, Stefan. So again, incredibly proud of your accomplishments and where you are today. You've done an incredible job. So kudos to you.
Thank you, Gary. I do my best, man. I'm always trying.
Yeah, I'm always keeping an eye on you, brother. I always am. So listen, with that, Stefan, I learned a lot from this call. I know the listeners will most likely have as well too. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your information, the education. And with that, if people want to get a hold of you or to kind of get into any of the education or find out when you're speaking next or any of your webinars, how do they do that? Where do they go?
So people can find me at StefanAarnio.com. That's StefanAarnio.com. And, you know, they can Google my books. I got Self-Made, Money People Deal, third one, The 10 Commandments and Negotiations. You can Google those books to find me. But, you know, my name, StefanAarnio. You type that into Google, you'll find me, no problem.
Beautiful. Stefan, thank you very much again. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate the call. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye. Thank you all so much for joining this month's podcast. I hope you guys really enjoyed the content. Don't forget to check out smarthomechoice.ca to learn more about real estate investing and how we can help.